one episode in their lifetime. And as we all know, the urinary tract can be infected at various levels, be it in the urethra, so urethritis, or cystitis in the bladder. The ureters can be infected, but usually not alone. And the worst, of course, is when the renal parenchyma is involved. The pathophysiology of urinary tract infection is generally ascribed to as an ascending infection when the pertinent bacteria, usually E. coli, which really resides in the lower genital tract, can find their way in the urinary tract. And as I've said, the most common really is E. coli. About 70 to 80% of urinary tract infections are due to E. coli. Yeah. Again, it's an ascending infection. Rarely is it a blood-borne infection, meaning starts as bacteremia and affect the kidneys. That's relatively rare. No? All right. Unfortunately, some women or some patients who have urinary tract infection, they may be infected with more pathogenic organisms than E. coli, especially patients who are catheterized or have invasive renal procedures. No, they can be infected with the more pathogenic types of organisms like the Enterobacteriaceae. Hospitalized patients especially can have infection with Klebsiella as well as Pseudomonas. So, but this would be rare, no? That's a lesson to many of us. If you have patients who are in the hospital and they develop hospital-acquired urinary tract infection, E. coli is not always the pathogen, but these patients generally are more problematic than those that are community-acquired. Who are at risk for urinary tract infection? By virtue of their anatomy, no, the shortened urethra, it is women, of course, no. And well, my specialty is in obstetrics and gynecology, so we see a lot of women with urinary tract infection. They say it is related to sexual activity as well, and that's easy to conceive din naman, no. It's not exactly a sexually transmitted infection, in that the pathogens involved are not really sexually transmitted pathogens like gonorrhea or maybe chlamydia. But the activity itself can lead to trauma and introduction of bacteria in the lower genital tract that can ascend again the urinary tract. Certain people with underlying medical conditions like diabetes are at higher risk of getting urinary tract infection as well. And those with anatomic abnormalities of the urinary tract, be it obstruction from abnormal anatomy or the presence of urinary stones. Again, anything that causes stasis of urine, no, in the urinary tract can predispose to urinary infection. Yeah. Let's discuss a rather common but not too a problematic infection, a form of urinary tract infection. It is called acute uncomplicated cystitis. So the infection involves only the bladder, no, urinary bladder. We say uncomplicated if it occurs in a host who is not immunocompromised. Right? So let's make that clear. So the classic symptoms, and we need to be sort of familiar with them. Dysuria, which is painful urination. Frequency is doing it often enough. Urgency is when there is that urge and there is no time, no, to wait for it. Suprapubic pain because of the location of the urinary bladder. Right. There must be absence of systemic symptoms like fever, flank pains, because that would entail involvement of the kidneys already. No? So this presence of fever and flank pains generally would alert us to the presence of acute pyelonephritis, which again is a more serious infection. So talking about acute uncomplicated cystitis. Now, for this particular session, we'll not talk about pyelonephritis. Maybe if there are some questions, either from the floor or online, we can address them, but I'll focus more on uh, acute uncomplicated cystitis, and later on towards the end of the presentation on what we call asymptomatic bacteriuria. No? Alright. So we'll talk about that in a while. Okay, how do we diagnose acute uncomplicated cystitis? Urine microscopy will be helpful for patients with typical symptoms. Typical symptoms. Please keep that in mind. No? When patients have typical symptoms, urine microscopy will be helpful in confirming the diagnosis. Because later on we'll say in asymptomatic bacteriuria, patients with no urinary symptoms at all. Generally, we don't want to use microscopy, urine analysis as a means to diagnose because we will be inaccurate in a large percentage of the time. All right. As you know, urine microscopy will be able to identify the pus cells, and there is a cutoff for this. No? More than 10 white blood cells or pus cells per microliter of urine is suggestive, although not yet diagnostic. No? So suggestive. Remember, we're still talking about those with symptoms. With symptoms. The greatest value of microscopy, they say, no, for symptomatic patients is the negative predictive value. Meaning, if you have a patient with typical symptoms, no, like hypogastric pain, maybe dysuria, and all those other things, you do a microscopy, and the microscopy shows no pus cells, no bacteria, then you are probably confident in saying that the symptoms are not due to infection, maybe due to something else, right? Urine dipsticks can also be helpful. They're more readily available at the bedside. And we're looking here for leukocyte esterase and nitrite. No? You're probably familiar with the use of urine dipsticks. So there are rapid tests that can help us, no, in confirming the diagnosis of acute uncomplicated cystitis. The gold standard, of course, as we all know, is a urine CS or culture sensitivity, isolating 10 to the 5 colony-forming units per ml of a pathogenic organism, usually E. coli again. No? So again, this is the gold standard. The problem is, of course, we cannot always do urine culture for many reasons. So again, if urine culture is not available, either it's not practical to do in settings where urine culture is not easily available, again, urine microscopy uh, will be helpful together with urine dipstick as we've discussed previously. Okay, how accurate are symptoms ba in predicting urinary tract infection? As I've said, we need to be specific when we ask patients, no, about their symptoms. Among women kasi, it's common practice that this is a common fallacy, I think. When women complain of hypogastric pain, no, na masakit sa puson, and then either we request urinalysis or they come with urinalysis results already, we always jump to the conclusion this is UTI. Remember, hypogastric pain, as mentioned lang, no, is not always equivalent to these typical symptoms. We need to be specific and ask, is the pain triggered by urination? Dysuria, no? Dysuria. Kasi in women, hypogastric pain can be due to many other things. The worst, of course, is if they have pelvic inflammatory disease, right? Rather than urinary tract infection. And perhaps you know that the treatment of urinary tract infection, kunyari acute cystitis, is very different from the treatment of pelvic inflammatory disease in women, right? So we might fall into the trap of saying UTI lang yan, nung pala PID, because we were basing it on hypogastric pain and we did not bother to ask further, no, is that dysuria, no, is that urinary frequency, etc. Okay, so I know this is a PMA convention, and perhaps many of us do not bother to do a pelvic exam on women kasi no, usually OB yan or gynae. So beware lang, hypogastric pain, no, as we know it, and then they show us a urinalysis result, or we request a urinalysis, and then we see past cells, no? And then we jump to the conclusion, this is UTI. Noon pala, more serious than UTI, which is PID, pelvic inflammatory disease. So that's a message that I'd like to get across lang, no? So again, these are symptoms with low diagnostic value. They are poor predictors, no? And as mentioned by several authorities, dysuria and frequency present with no vaginal discharge or irritation, which is, you know, not really always seen. Very high likelihood ito of urinary tract infection. Diba? We don't always ask for discharge naman kasi. So sometimes we get into that trap. No? Okay, so if dysuria is absent, yung typical, and it's just hypogastric pain, it's very tempting to say urinary tract infection yan, which is really unlikely. And we might be missing out on a more important, more serious infection like pelvic inflammatory disease. Or for that matter, patient may not be having PID, no? Baka endometriosis or some other things. Yan. Okay. So if we think it's acute cystitis, what can we give the patient? According to the local guidelines, no, these are the local guidelines that, although relatively old, still valid. No, the first line therapy for acute uncomplicated cystitis are these agents. No, either you use nitrofurantoin at appropriate doses, or fosfomycin. It's a relatively new formulation. Comes in sachet, 3 grams. The granules are diluted in half glass or full glass of water and taken single dose. Right? This is the first line therapy. Okay? High efficacy, no, with low collateral resistance. Let me spend a few minutes explaining why we should not be giving these alternative options. They're alternative, of course, though they're not first line. As you can imagine, you're probably using a lot of comoxiclav, cefuroxime, or other oral cephalosporins. They may be second line. Let's not use them for first line. Why? These 2 drugs, yung first line, they stay in the urinary tract only. They don't affect the oral flora. They don't go to the GI tract. They don't go to the respiratory tract. So in other words, they're sharpshooters for urinary tract. Why don't you want to kill also the different organisms in the different bodies? Because when you do so, when you use these drugs, no, also these drugs din naman, they kill other organisms, the sensitive organisms, kunyari in the respiratory tract, in the GI tract. So when you kill also those organisms, when these patients subsequently develop infection, kunyari bigla siyang inubo, no? Pinatay mo na yung mga sensitive strep doon eh. Anong natira? Ang natira doon yung mga resistant organisms. So that when such patients, you know, when they develop respiratory infection, when they develop GI infection, etc., you are left with the resistant ones, mas mahirap na silang i-treat. So yun yung sinasabi nating collateral damage. You're killing innocent bystanders, leaving alone the resistant ones, so that when these patients, they develop infection later on, problematic yung infection. So that's a big problem when we are not cognizant of ang tawag namin dito antibiotic stewardship. If it's just in the urinary tract, ito lang ang kailangan mo. Remember, we're not yet talking here about pyelonephritis, kasi these drugs are not good for pyelonephritis. Again, maybe in a different session, we'll talk about pyelonephritis. One other thing, I think this is also important, especially from an infectious disease specialist point of view. No? We use this only if culture proven, lalo na yung fluoroquinolones. A lot of our colleagues kasi ang reflex nila pag UTI, kahit ang cystitis lang, bigyan mo ng fluoroquinolone, bigyan mo Cipro, Libo, maybe even the others. Let me tell you, when we are dealing with rifampicin INH tuberculosis, we resort to these drugs, yung mga fluoroquinolones. I don't know if you know that. If it's INH resistant, rifampicin resistant, second line, parang go-to antibiotics ang mga fluoroquinolones. So if you use fluoroquinolones left and right for urinary tract infection, pretty soon they're not effective anymore for drug-resistant tuberculosis. So we have nothing else to give, no? Yung parang ganun. So again, we need to reserve these drugs for more important infections. So again, take-home message is acute and complicated cystitis. Use these ones for the different reasons I mentioned. Okay. Moving on to another type. No? This one is asymptomatic. So patients, they don't have symptoms. But for some reason, you do a screen, you do a whatever, and then you see a lot of pyuria, bacteriuria in the urine without symptoms. What do? Sometimes we say that is asymptomatic bacteriuria. Can we use urinalysis for the diagnosing asymptomatic bacteriuria? The recommendation is no. When the patient has no typical symptoms, it should be urine culture. Again, 10 to the 5. No? In fact, they say 2 consecutive pa nga. This is the principle. No? If the patient has no typical symptoms, our laboratory criteria for the diagnosis criteria are very strict. No? Strict kapag wala siyang typical symptoms. Kanina, yung acute uncomplicated cystitis, kasi nga symptomatic sila, typically symptomatic, pwede na, urine analysis, dipstick, yung ganon. Pero if they have no symptoms, lalo na, kunyari, routine urinalysis for employment, walang symptoms, and then babalik siya, female, ang daming pus cells, ang daming bacteria, will you treat that patient? As we will see in a while, you don't have to treat, especially if the patient is a healthy patient, right? Ito nga, is antibiotic warranted? A big no, right? Okay, unless the patient is pregnant. So, very selective, walang symptoms, and for some reason you did culture or you think it's significant, unless they're pregnant, you don't treat. Okay? Or unless they've undergone or will undergo a urologic invasive procedure. Okay. Why would you want to focus on pregnant patients with ASB? Because these women, in fact, we routinely in obstetrics, I hope you're also doing this for those who are looking after pregnant patients, we routinely recommend screening for ASB in pregnant patients, usually at the end of the first trimester before the second trimester. So that's 16 weeks. Right? This is again in the recommendation. This is routine care for pregnant women. Why? And again, we do it by culture. Why is it we do it for pregnant women? We don't use urinalysis, we don't use dipstick, we use urine culture. If urine culture is not available, again, for whatever reason, for pregnant women, request a gram stain instead. Hindi ito urinalysis, it's a gram stain. And if you see at least one organism per oil immersion field, kunyari yung microscopist nyo, sinabi niya, may isang organism, mukhang form ng E. coli or whatever it is, no? You say, all right, for pregnant women, even without symptoms, you say, she has ASB. And because she's pregnant, we need to treat. We need to treat. What can we give for pregnant women with ASB? The list in the guidelines are many, no? Ito lahat kasama. And nitrofurantoin is here. Di ba sabi natin kanina, no? Nitrofurantoin and fosfomycin, right? In pregnancy, pwede ba yon? Sabi dito, fosfomycin, anytime during pregnancy, okay to give. Okay? How about nitrofurantoin? Di ba sabi natin first line? There are some concerns lang for nitrofurantoin among pregnant women. We try to avoid giving nitrofurantoin in the first trimester because of certain correlation with some defects in the baby. We also don't want to give nitrofurantoin towards the end of pregnancy, yung late third trimester, pag malapit ng mga anak, no? Kasi nga, for some reason, yung G6PD deficiency, etc., etc. So medyo limited yung safe period, no, for giving nitrofurantoin for pregnant women. So kunyari, ayaw mo nang isipin pa yun, no, yung mga ganun. Fosfomycin na lang. Right? Single dose, anytime during pregnancy. ASB, kahit wala siyang symptoms, nag-gram stain ka, nag-culture ka, preferably, pregnant women, bigyan mo ng treatment. Pero kung wala siyang symptoms, no need. Right? Again, this is a drug that is mentioned in the guidelines. These are Philippine guidelines. That means all the data, all the information are based on what is existing in the Philippines, not what is existing in the United States or in Iran or wherever. Kaya nga, notice also, no, strong recommendation, high quality of evidence. All right. Okay, again, why fosfomycin? It's a unique molecule. It's cidal. It kills the E. coli and many others. It is patient-friendly kasi one dose lang, no? Although some patients will have some GI symptoms which are mild, usually transient, no? Again, E. coli, even, I don't know if you're familiar, ESBL, E. coli. No? ESBL is the type of E. coli that is resistant to the usual antimicrobials. But with fosfomycin, it's still, right? And this is the one of the important reasons, no? Yung sabi ko kaninang antibiotic stewardship, fosfomycin stays in the urinary tract lang. Doesn't affect the others, no? All right, so you know that. Okay. However, let me warn you, fosfomycin and nitrofurantoin, they're not yet first-line drugs or recommended for pyelonephritis. Okay, so either ASB in pregnant or acute uncomplicated cystitis lang. Okay, so again, fosfomycin together with nitrofurantoin, first line. Kung pregnant, you prefer fosfomycin, no? And the good thing about lang, advantage of fosfomycin over nitrofurantoin, one dose lang, no? Single dose, instead of giving it for 5 to 7 days. Okay, again, let me emphasize lang the strengths of fosfomycin. single dose therapy. So as you can imagine, it's better for patients in terms of compliance. No? Useful in setting with rising resistance, such as one in the Philippines, even for ESBL. ESBL is one of the culprits for making organisms resistant. Well, it is cost effective because it's one dose lang, no, in several studies. Can be convenient for patients needing just outpatient care, no, and those with compliance issues. Just some clinical pearls. I have a few more minutes, I think. In a patient with dysuria, no, yung painful urination, hindi hypogastric pain, frequency without discharge, particular women, the probability of UTI is increased, right? Okay? Dapat specific yung urinary symptom. Negative dipstick does not rule out if symptoms are classic. And avoid treating bacteriuria without symptoms. Ito yung ASB natin kanina, no? So only for pregnant patients and those who will undergo urologic procedures, no? Yung invasive urologic procedures. So do not screen non-pregnant for asymptomatic, no? Do not treat them, no? Avoid fluoroquinolones as first line. Let's reserve them for resistant tuberculosis and many of the other serious infections. And short course therapy is again one of the advantages of fosfomycin instead of giving them for 5 to 7 days with other drugs. I think this is my last slide. So thank you very much for the opportunity.